Hey guys, it's James here. As a long-term fan of Drumforge libraries and Matt Greiner's drumming, I was pretty excited to hear that they teamed up with Atrium Audio and released a drum library together. Having said that, I believe we as the consumer should never assume a product is good just because a celebrity endorses or is involved with it. So that's why I'm here to give you an honest and unbiased review. I'll show you a metal demo featuring Drumforge Matt Greiner, with all the drum mixing done inside the sampler, and I'll share the preset too. Then I'll compare it to Drumforge Savior and Drumforge Classic. And lastly, I'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of Drumforge Matt Greiner to help you decide if it's something you would want to pick up. Okay, enough with the words. Here's what Drumforge Matt Greiner sounds like in the mix. So what are your thoughts on the drums? Let me know in the comments. In the description below, you'll find two versions of the Drumforge Matt Greiner preset I exported from the demo you just heard. One is free and the other one costs just a few bucks. The only difference between them is that the free version doesn't have a built-in parallel compression. It's honestly not a big difference, but I did use parallel compression in the demo, so if you want to just show a little support, go ahead and get the exact preset I used. If not, that's totally cool. The free one is super awesome already, and you can easily set up parallel compression yourself. You probably have a favorite compressor for that anyway. Let's dive into the review and talk about the pros of this library. I gotta say, I think the biggest strength of Drumforge Matt Greiner is the shells. They sound really good, especially the snares. I'm even tempted to say that they might be among the best I've heard. The first thing I noticed when I tried out the library was how natural and balanced the snares sound. I have all the Drumforge libraries, and the shells usually sound very processed, which isn't necessarily a bad thing by the way, and sometimes that is the selling point. But the ones in Drumforge Matt Greiner just have a much more natural sound. They kind of sound like they're straight from a recording session. And for the first time, I actually like every single snare sound in this library. Take a listen to the comparisons. You can easily hear how Drumforge Matt Greiner stands out here. And now is the perfect time to show you how Drumforge Savior and Drumforge Classic sound in the same demo compared to Drumforge Matt Greiner. Once again, all drum mixing is done strictly inside the samplers using my custom presets. Quite a big difference there, eh? I think they all sound terrific, but my favorite one for this particular demo is certainly Drumforge Matt Greiner. I especially love the depth and thickness the kick gives the mix, and the toms just sound very natural, full, and yet they still cut through the mix. My Drumforge Savior preset has a thicker and punchier snare tone, but the one in my Drumforge Matt Greiner preset has a wood tone that sounds nice, warm, and natural. I also find the chinas in this library to sound quite fantastic. According to the creators, the libraries does include the chinas used in August Burns Red's album Messengers, if that's something you care about. I also find these samples in Drumforge Matt Greiner to hit a sweet spot between being very processed and very raw. With Drumforge Bergstrand, for example, all these samples are very processed, which is kind of the point here because you are getting Bergstrand's personal samples. But if you find the processing to be too much or want to create your own drum tones, you're kind of out of luck. Take Superior Drummer 3 as another example. All the samples are super raw, which allows you to craft your own drum tones from scratch. But at the same time, it can make it hard to create that really polished modern metal drum sound without routing the drums to your DAW and doing a whole lot of processing. The samples in Drumforge Matt Greiner, in comparison, have just enough baked-in processing that you can get very polished drum sound with the built-in channel insert if you need to, but also gives you the option to achieve a more natural and customized drum sound. Another strength of Drumforge Matt Greiner is the sampler itself. Although it's no competition compared to Superior Drummer 3, the Drumforge sampler has ample features that allow you to shape your drum tone, so you don't have to go through the hassle of routing the channels to your DAW and use additional plugins. If you consider all the major players in metal drum libraries right now, like Gecko Drums, Stephen Slade Drums, Superior Drummer 3, and Mixwave, the mixing capabilities in the Drumforge sampler are actually second to only Superior Drummer 3. With GGD drum libraries, for example, if you want to mix the snare a little, the only option you have is to route it out to a track in your DAW and use plugins. With Drumforge, you can just do that inside the sampler. It's really convenient. And because the samples are not too raw sounding, I find the 5 simple inserts to be sufficient to get a very polished result. You can easily import one-shot samples to layer on top of a drum instrument as well, and actually mix the one-shot sample just like other channels, such as echoing it, compressing it, clipping it, and so on. The sampler also allows you to tweak the ASR, velocity configurations, sampling configurations, pitch, and automatic alternation of left and right hands and feet. The Drumforge sampler has other minor strengths, but I've already mentioned them in the other 3 Drumforge videos I've uploaded on the channel, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. I'll put the links to those videos in the description, and you should definitely go watch them if you want to know more about the Drumforge sampler. Just like everything else in life, Drumforge Matt Greiner is not without weaknesses. I have been using Drumforge since the very beginning, when it was still a contact instrument, and I own all the Drumforge libraries. Throughout the years, the sampler has consistently been a weak point for me, despite the strengths that I mentioned before. The lack of a drum kit view has always made it harder for me to see what kind of drum kit I have configured, because when you look at the cards, it's just hard to tell which ones are the left crashes, how many crashes I loaded, which ones are crashes, and which ones are right. Maybe it's just me because I'm a very visual person, but I really find drum libraries without a kit view to be much less intuitive to use. It's also really bizarre that the sampler doesn't give you an overhead channel or a room channel for the entire kit automatically, like most drum libraries. For example, after creating your own drum kit by adding instruments from the left menu, you'll realize you don't have an overhead or room channel of the whole kit for mixing. You would have to manually route all the individual overhead channels for each instrument to a group, and then route all the individual room channels to another group in order to create the equivalent of overhead mics and room mics for the entire kit. Thankfully, all the built-in presets already have the overhead and room channels routed for you. But if you're creating your own drum kit from scratch, you'll have to go through the trouble of creating those channels yourself. My biggest disappointment of Drumforge Matt Greiner is, funnily enough, a new feature exclusive to this Drumforge library. You see, I was happily working on the drum mix for the demo in Drumforge Matt Greiner. All was going well until I click open the compressor insert on my parallel compression bus and saw this. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And then I remember reading about a new custom compressor in this Drumforge library. So I guess instead of having the traditional attack release ratio and threshold knobs like on normal channels, the custom compressor on group channels just gives you one knob called flex. Without the quintessential compressor parameters, the custom compressor makes it harder to dial in the kind of compression I want for parallel processing. I usually like my parallel compression for drums to have super fast attack and release to smear and distort the transient while amplifying the sustains. I also like to set a high-pass filter for the input so the compressor doesn't react to the low frequencies as much. With this one knob compressor, I'm not able to achieve any of that. And it's not just parallel compression either. I wanted to route the individual tom room mics to a dedicated group channels so I can put some aggressive compression on them. But I can't do that either simply because the room mics are fairly quiet and I don't have a knob to lower the threshold of the compressor to get a lot of gain reduction. I could technically increase the individual room channels, but that's extra steps that could be avoided in the first place. I don't care what fancy compressor this is modeled after. I believe there should be at least an option for the user to choose between the custom compressor and the regular SSL compressor. Now, to be fair, the custom compressor actually sounds quite good for compressing the drum bus. Nevertheless, without the traditional parameters, the compressor becomes a lot less useful and versatile in general. So is Drumforge Matt Greiner worth picking up? Who's the library for? To me, this is easily Drumforge's best all-around library, and I believe it can work really well for a wide variety of genres, metal or not. It doesn't have a lot of kicks or cymbals, but the ones included sound natural and, I'm using the word positively here, generic enough to be able to fit in different musical contexts through mixing. Now, there's a flip side to that. I noticed that some of these snares in Drumforge Matt Greiner start to sound quite similar to some snares from other libraries. So for this very reason, I'm not sure if Drumforge Matt Greiner is going to be super worth it for people who already have a ton of drum libraries. I just feel like you might not get a lot of new drum sounds here. However, if you don't own a wide range of drum libraries already, and you are looking for a new one that has a natural but not too raw drum sounds and allows you to get a full drum mix within the sampler, Drumforge Matt Greiner is a great choice. Or if you have been looking for some really sick sounding China cymbals for metal, Drumforge Matt Greiner is also a worthy addition. Alright, that's it for this review. Give it a like if you find it helpful or informative. Subscribe if you want to see more music production content like this. And I will see you next time.